It is Wednesday, August 19th, 2026, and in Anderson, Indiana, the White River is back between its banks. If you drove over the 8th Street Bridge this morning, you would see brown water moving fast and a lot of mud on the grass. And you might reasonably think the worst of this is finished. 5 days ago, that same river stopped rising at 24.93 feet. That is 7.6 meters. And when it did, this Indiana flood broke a 113-year record that a lot of people around here assumed was untouchable. But here is the part that has not made the national coverage, and it is the reason I am making this video instead of a recap. The record this flood beat was not set by rain. It was set by melting snow. And this time, there was no snow. I am Walter. This channel takes no sponsorships, no brand deals, and no gear money from anybody, which means nothing you are about to hear was shaped by someone with a check. Let me take you back to March of 1913, because you cannot understand what just happened without it. In late March that year, 6 to 8 inches of rain, 15 to 20 centimeters, fell across the White River watershed above Anderson in the space of about 3 days. That water landed on ground that had been frozen most of the winter and was still cold, still hard, and already holding meltwater from the last of the snowpack. Frozen or saturated ground does not absorb. It sheds. So nearly every drop that fell went straight into creeks and straight into the river. Late in that same storm, the rain changed over to snow. The White River at Anderson went from a normal spring level of under 4 feet to a record crest in roughly 48 hours. Translated to the gauge Anderson uses today, that crest stands at 23.6 feet. The Great Flood of 1913 killed somewhere between 100 and 200 people in Indiana alone, and more than 600 across 13 states. It is still the second deadliest flood in American history. That is the benchmark. Snowmelt, frozen ground, spring runoff, every factor stacked in the same direction. Now look at what beat it. This month, a stalled frontal boundary parked itself across the Midwest with moisture values near 2 inches of precipitable water, which is about as loaded as the atmosphere gets over Indiana in August. Storms formed along that boundary and rolled over the same counties again and again, one behind the other. Forecasters call that training because the storms pass over you like cars on a train. Same track, same ground, no break in between. Newcastle measured 11.43 inches of rain, 29 centimeters. Greensburg took more than 7. Parts of central Indiana picked up close to a foot of water in under 2 days. And it came in August, not March. In August, the soil column across central Indiana should be near its driest point of the year. The corn is drawing water, the trees are pulling water, the ground is warm and open. That watershed had every natural advantage it does not have in the spring, and it still ran higher than 1913. At Anderson, 24.93 feet on Friday the 14th. At Noblesville, roughly 24.6 feet, about a foot over the mark 1913 left there. 2 gauges, 2 records that stood for 113 years, both gone in the same 24 hours to a summer rainstorm with no melting snow behind it. I want to be careful here. This does not mean 1913 was somehow less serious. 1913 killed hundreds of people and left 250,000 homeless across the Midwest, and this did not, because warning systems, levees, and emergency response have improved enormously in a century. What it means is narrower and, I think, more useful to you. It means the amount of rain it now takes to overwhelm that watershed is a number a single stalled summer front can produce. That is a different risk profile than the one most people in Madison and Hamilton counties have been carrying in their heads. Here is where things stand right now. The Indiana Department of Homeland Security has confirmed at least 7 storm and flood-related deaths since August 11th across Delaware, Jennings, Lake, Porter, LaPorte, and Henry counties. Among them, a 4-year-old boy in Jennings County killed when a tree came down on his family's home during the derecho. An 18-year-old, Matthew Morey, who entered the Mississinewa River on Wednesday and was found Saturday. A 58-year-old woman in Delaware County who deputies believe drove into floodwater. I am not going to dwell on any of it beyond saying that at least 2 of those deaths involve water and a vehicle, and that is the most preventable category on this list. In Indianapolis, the mayor declared a local emergency and told residents of Ravenswood and Rocky Ripple to leave immediately as conditions shifted hour by hour. City firefighters ran 51 water rescues in a single day, reaching 95 people and 45 pets. In Carmel, 40 residents and a senior living facility were evacuated. In Noblesville, more than 550 residential units took damage. In Anderson, the mayor confirmed the Park Place levee held, but he was clear that families were displaced anyway and that homes and businesses across the city were hit hard. State officials estimate well over 1,000 people are displaced statewide. The president approved an emergency declaration on Saturday. And that brings me to the number in the title, which is the real story of the next 12 months in central Indiana. The Indiana Department of Insurance reports 15,056 flood insurance policies in force across the entire state, about 0.58% of residential structures. A separate analysis built on FEMA's own policy data puts it closer to 1 household in 148. Those 2 figures disagree slightly, and I am giving you both rather than picking the more dramatic one. Either way you land, it is well under 1%. Now understand what that means, because a lot of people are learning it this week in the worst possible way. Your homeowner's policy does not cover flooding. Your renter's policy does not cover flooding. Flood coverage is a separate product, written mostly through the National Flood Insurance Program, and it is only mandatory if you carry a federally backed mortgage on a home inside a mapped high-risk zone. Everybody else opts in, and almost nobody does. So the overwhelming majority of the families pulling ruined drywall out onto the curb in Noblesville and Anderson this week are looking at that bill with no policy behind it. The state estimates a single inch of water causes about $20,000 in damage, and the mapped zone logic is exactly what failed here. Between 2014 and 2024, close to 1/3 of all national flood insurance claims came from properties outside high-risk zones. Indiana's own emergency management director has put it about as plainly as it can be put. Everyone lives in a floodplain. It is only a question of how much water it takes. So here is what you do, and this is the practical core of it. If you took damage, file a report with your county emergency management office, even if you have no insurance, because those reports are the data the state uses to build its case for a major disaster declaration. And individual FEMA assistance does not open until that separate declaration is approved. It has not been yet. Document everything now with photos and video before you throw anything out. Call your insurer this week, regardless of whether you think you are covered. If you do hold an NFIP policy, you have 60 days from the date of damage to file. And if you were not touched this time, this is your window. Look your address up on FEMA's Flood Map Service Center at msc.fema.gov. Then buy the policy anyway, even if the map says you are clear, because there is a 30-day waiting period before NFIP coverage takes effect. 30 days. You cannot buy it when the forecast turns. Marion County alone already carries 34 severe repetitive loss properties, which tells you flooding in this state is not a once-a-century event at the property level. Back in Anderson, the water is off the streets and the cleanup has started, and 113 years of history says that river will go quiet for a long time now. But the record it broke last Friday was set by melting snow on frozen ground, and this one was set by an August rainstorm. The next one does not need winter's help either. Everything in this video traces to the National Weather Service, the Storm Prediction Center, the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, the Indiana Department of Insurance, and named county and city officials. This is still developing. The major disaster declaration is pending, damage assessments are underway, and the death toll is not final. I will update the moment official sources do, and if any of it is corrected, I will say so on camera rather than quietly edit a description. If this was worth your time, subscribe and turn notifications on so the next update actually reaches you. My thanks to the swift water crews, the line workers still out there, and every family in Anderson, Noblesville, and Indianapolis working through a mess they did not ask for. Keep an eye on the water and take care of the people next door.